everyone. Firstly, well done for surviving the whole week. We made it. You're here on a Friday morning. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. I'm really grateful you're all here, especially considering it's 9 a.m. and the party was last night. I don't drink, so I'm actually feeling okay. And I know a couple of you are feeling a bit delicate, not going to name any names. But welcome to my talk today. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Bridget Fitzsimons. I'm part of the corporate comms team at SUSE. I work primarily with the people team looking after the DEI, sustainability, and people agendas. So I'm just here today to talk to you a little bit about how you can use storytelling to deliver some of your messages, some presentation skills, and really harnessing that really powerful human connection to deliver your stories. Because I think in technical teams sometimes we can get really bogged down in the details and in the messaging, but really just because you're technical, it doesn't mean you can't use those human elements to deliver your story. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, I'm going to cover my story because I'm a storyteller. We're going to go through some of the common problems, how we overcome them, and I'll leave you with some key takeaways, very easy ones that you can remember. And then we'll have some time for questions. So if there's anything that you do want to ask me, I'm happy to answer. So the most important thing, obviously, my story. So I've worked in corporate communications for almost 10 years. I started that journey at Deutsche Bank in Dublin. Those of you who are familiar with Dublin might be a bit surprised to see the blue sky. I promise you. No, that is Dublin. If you're from Dublin, that is just Stephen's Green on the left there. I worked on an advanced analytics team in Deutsche Bank in Dublin, helping them communicate Deutsche's first kind of AI findings internally. That was, I think, 25 degrees in June for Pride, which, like I say, is completely unheard of. You can see all of us pale Irish people there hiding ourselves under our hats. After Deutsche, I moved to Accenture. This is from the International Women's Day event at Accenture in Dublin in 2023. In Accenture, my final role there was looking after the DEI comms for the UK and Ireland. So while I was based in London at this stage, this event was in Dublin, which was really, really nice. And then there's some familiar people in this photo. I moved to SUSE last May, and this is some of my friends from the Chief Strategy Office at our offsite a few weeks ago in Villanova. Are you laughing? He looks happy to be there.
Very happy.
Yeah, because he sat beside me, obviously. So these are kind of the main companies that I've worked at doing corporate communications. 3 very different organizations, different industries. But what I've noticed in my time in corporate communications is that the same issues are affecting the same teams. It doesn't really matter if you're an advanced AI practitioner, if you're someone who's a learning and development expert, or if you're someone who's trying to roll out a corporate strategy. There's common issues that affect all of these teams. And I'll just leave you with the most important part of my story, which is that I have 2 cats, and they love Geeko. So that's very important. So like I was just saying, subject matter experts often need a lot of help to refine and deliver their stories. And there's no shame in that, okay? You know, when you're someone who's really good at what you do, and I'm assuming everyone here is, you get really bogged down in the detail because you want to learn more, and you get really excited about what you're talking about because what you're an expert in is really cool and really interesting, right? But when you're talking to people who aren't as familiar with what you're talking about, you can get a little bit bogged down in those details and you can alienate some people. Nobody is doing this right first time. And I think that's also a really important thing to remember. Storytelling and delivering stories is a skill like anything else. So if you're someone who's really nervous about talking about what you're an expert in, you can take comfort in the fact that everyone from analyst to CEO level needs practice and needs notes and needs training to deliver their story. And nobody, no matter if they're working in an investment bank, a tech firm, or a management consultancy, is getting it right the first time they try, myself included, by the way. And technology can be a help to us as long as we're very conscious about how we're using it. And I think in today's, very virtual meeting focused world, we can get very reliant on technology. And, I'm going to talk about virtual and in-person sessions and storytelling. I think no matter what way we're using it, we need to be very kind of conscious about the technology we're using. And there's obviously different considerations depending on if you're talking in person like we are now, or if we're talking virtually. Oh, I just turned that off. And finally, good storytelling and clear messaging are going to bring disparate groups together. So in my current role, I work with the people team to deliver company-wide messages to all different types of people. So at SUSE, we're about approximately 2/5 engineers, 2/5 sales, and 1/5 everyone else. That includes me. So very different people who need to be united under very clear and concise messaging. And hopefully, if we do our job right, people will feel that they can be united under a common purpose. Now, I've kind of thrown a lot of dark and sad things at you, but the good news is we can overcome all of these issues. And even though I'm saying nobody's doing it right, everyone's kind of, anxious about what they're doing and what they're saying, it's actually relatively easy to overcome these issues. And I wanted this presentation to be a little bit of fun. I realized we were coming to the end of SUSECon, and so I've really gone hard on the chameleon theme and the cartoon theme. And I'll go into why I've done that later on. But it's really easy to overthink presenting and overthink storytelling. But the truth is that you're just talking about something that you love. Like, that's what it comes down to. So if you can kind of take yourself out of the nervousness and the anxiety, this is what you can come back to. You're going to talk about something really cool that people are going to be excited to hear about. You're going to tell people, I need you to do this, I need you to know this, and they're going to go away and think, gosh, Hayley's just told me something really cool. I'm going to go and I'm going to put that into my day-to-day now. And that's really great, And it doesn't matter if you're talking about something deeply technical or you're talking about something that's more people-focused. It's all about that human in-person connection, even if you're doing it virtually. It's not about, I'm talking about this large language model. I'm talking about this new career framework that we need to roll out. It's about how do I connect with my fellow person and how do I inspire them to think the way I'm thinking or do something I want them to do. So this is our first issue, and this is what we're going to talk about. I think this is the most important thing. Who here has ever been to a presentation where they have no idea what's going on? Thank you. Who here has ever given a presentation and worried that people will have no idea what's going on? Yeah. I kind of worried about that today, I'm not going to lie. But the biggest thing that we can talk about in presenting and storytelling is keeping it really simple and keeping it clear. So when I say lack of clarity, I mean it actually oddly in a positive sense. I find that experts are really excited about what they're doing. And if you're an expert in, for example, I'm taking Demopalooza as an example. If you're an expert in observability, you're going to be so excited to tell everyone about this new capability that we have. You're going to be so excited to go into the detail and explain every last line of code and really get into it. But I have to be honest with you, someone like me, who often has trouble turning on her iPhone, is going to be a little bit alienated by that. And the problem is that you marry that passion and that excitement with that lack of knowledge on the other side, and you just end up really alienating people. Because the issue is that people who aren't an expert in something, and this is just human nature, when they're confronted with someone who knows an awful lot more than them, they will get a little bit defensive when they don't understand absolutely everything that's being said. And it's very normal for audiences to say, oh my gosh, I have no idea what Bridget just said in those last 2 minutes. I'm just going to switch off and check some emails, especially if we're in a virtual meeting setting. And the truth is, actually, you might think it's easier to present on a virtual meeting, but when you're on a virtual setting, you're fighting with so much more distractions. Like, we're here in person, I can see you, we can look at each other. I can see who's checking their phone or who's, looking elsewhere. But in a virtual meeting, I can just, ping my meeting over to the other screen and start typing and checking emails if I feel a little bit alienated. And that lack of clarity is what's going to alienate your audience there. You can see how my little brown friend on the right here is a little bit terrified by what her green friend is saying. She's like, oh my gosh, what is this guy even saying to me? We've all been there, right? But it's really about taking your message and distilling it down to maybe 2 sentences. And that's where you go from, right? You just think, how do I make the thing that I'm passionate about as easy as possible for people to understand? And what do I really want people to do? And I'll go into this as well a little bit later on, but it also comes down to your presentation materials as well. You'll see I've chosen to go for pretty much just pictures, not a lot of text, because I'm hoping that you guys will enjoy more hearing what I have to say and the little cartoons that I've come up with to support my message. So an example of this that I did want to talk about is when I worked at Deutsche Bank, and like I say, the people I worked directly with were advanced AI practitioners. I have a master's in film studies, so I was definitely the odd one out there. We had just done some work into deep learning models and how they might be applied to tackling and how they might be applied to tackling financial crime, which is obviously a really huge thing in the investment bank. The guy I was working with had, I think, 3 postdoctoral qualifications in electronic engineering. He was one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And he was really, really excited about these models he had created. Because why wouldn't he be, right? Like, in his mind, he's like, I've created these models from scratch. I'm going to solve financial crime at Deutsche Bank. I'm killing it, right? But he had a real tendency to put up loads of slides with all these neural nets going in and out of each other. And even how I'm explaining it now is not right, and I said it to him, I was like, if I'm the person that's translating your work and I have no idea what's going on, how's a director in the investment bank going to have any idea what's going on? So we literally stripped back his slides, and we were literally it was 1 word on each slide to say, this is what's going to happen if you don't do it, this is what's going to happen if you do. Here's the result of the model, and you can say something like, I can show you the model in more detail if you'd like. We could grab a coffee, a virtual coffee, an in-person coffee, and I can go through it with you in granular detail. I can share the models with you. But when you're going in on an introductory session, you have to be so high level and so clear, because the purpose of these sessions, or I'm assuming when you're talking to people, is you either want them to do something or you want them to know something. And you're never going to achieve either of those things without having that level of clarity. So related to this is too much information. And I'll be honest, this is kind of how I feel at the end of SUSECon. I've met so many people, and I'm a little bit frazzled. But we often think that in presenting something, we need to tell absolutely everything about what we know about our subject matter area. But the truth is actually that when it comes to information, less is more, right? So you might want to go in and another example of this might be when I worked at Accenture, and we were actually doing a redundancy program in COVID, which was a really stressful program to work on. There's a lot of legal and financial information that goes into redundancy programs in the UK. And our HR director wanted to send an email with absolutely everything outlining. So if Bridget's being made redundant, here's what she needs to know in a legal financial sense. If Andy's not being made redundant, here's what he needs to know. And can you imagine if you're in a part of a population who might be made redundant and you get a 4-page email with 5 different scenarios laid out, and you're like, oh my God, what the am I trying to say? How do I know what's going to happen? Too much information, even when it's in something that's really important, can actually lead to more confusion and more fear. And what you really want to avoid in these situations, obviously, is fear, because once you make people afraid or intimidated or defensive, they're just going to pull back. Like, people are like lovely little hedgehogs who just want to curl back up into themselves. We're very fragile in the sense that when we feel like there's too much coming at us, we're just going to switch off. So when you're thinking about your messaging, there's a really nice thing in communications called the rule of 3. You want to give people 3 things or 4 things maybe to take away and not overwhelm them. And if it's something like you do need to give people that information, like in that redundancy situation, that's a legal situation and people have the legal right to get all that information. You store it in a really easy to find place that you share with everyone. So it might be a situation, what we did in that email in the end was that if you are at risk of redundancy, here's your intranet website. If you're not, here's your intranet website. So Andy and I, not that Andy and I are being made redundant, but Andy and I know exactly where we need to go to get the information that we need. And that information is laid out very clearly and very concisely. And we're not scared and we're not intimidated and we know exactly where we stand and we don't look frazzled and burnt out like our little friend here. And I wanted to give you an example of what too much information looks like. I actually made this slide a couple of weeks ago before I refined some of my messaging a bit. But would you rather that you heard me talk and look at this little chameleon? Or would you rather I talked at you while you tried to process all of this? And again, we've all been on a presentation where we've just been confronted or hit over the head with a slide like this. And the thing is, people can either read or they can listen. So if you are, I'm not saying you can't use slides like this, but if I had a slide like this, I'd say, okay, I want you to take a couple of minutes to just process this, and I would just stand to the side and let you guys read it and give you some time to take it in. It's totally okay to have a bit of silence and a bit of time if you need people to process written information. But if you're asking people to process written information and listen to you at the same time, it's just not going to happen. You do have to make the decision between one or the other. And you can say too much information. That'll take you a couple of seconds to read, and then you can switch back and listen to me. If I'm asking you to read, there is a limit to the amount of information that we as humans can take in, blah, 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 blah. You're just going to either read this or you're going to listen to me, and then you're going to think, oh God, I've totally missed what was on that slide. What am I going to do? You're going to message me saying, Bridget, can you share those slides with me? You're going to have to make extra time to read the slides. You probably won't remember to read the slides. So I've lost you already, right? What's the point? So just keep it very clear and keep it easy for people to understand. Just remember those times you've been in a presentation where you're struggling to read and listen, and just put yourself in the shoes of your audience. And that brings us to not thinking about your audience, which it sounds like a logical thing that everyone would do at a presentation, but you'd be really surprised by how often we all get caught up in thinking, okay, I have 5 things I need to say, here's what I'm going to say, and here's what I'm going to communicate. But you actually need to think about who it is you're talking to, right? So for me, at SUSE, I'm communicating in English, which I'm lucky that that's my native language, or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. But we're communicating in English, but we're communicating to a lot of people who speak English as a 2nd, 3rd, 4th language. And for me, as an Irish person, I have a real tendency to talk very, very, very quickly. And I have to think that not everyone, even native English speakers, are going to understand me when I speak in my natural tone. My boss, Dom, is laughing because he's English and he has trouble understanding me a lot of the time. So when you're thinking about your audience, it comes back to those things that I keep saying. What is it that you want them to think, and what is it that you want them to do? So if you're a technical person who's rolling out something really cool to an internal audience, you might be thinking, number 1, I want everyone at SUSE to know about my product, and number 2, I want everyone at SUSE to use my product. And how are you going to get people like me, who, like I say, can barely use their iPhone, to do that? You're going to use simple examples. You're going to have fun with your subject. You're going to really lean in and listen to the questions that people ask you. It's not about saying, this is what I have to say for me. You need to remember that presentations are for your audience, and it's a tool that you're using to communicate your message. So it comes back to those 2 things. And if I can give you one piece of advice, I think this is probably the most important. especially in a virtual world, right? So, like I said before, your audience, you're fighting with everything that's distracting your audience. For me, if I'm in your audience, you're fighting with my overflowing inbox, you're fighting with my Slack, you're fighting with my cats who are like crawling up my legs looking for attention. And, you know, people have kids that are in the house, you know, asking for attention, spouses, flatmates. So it's really about thinking, who is it I'm talking to? If it's a primarily virtual audience, how do I make it fun and engaging enough that they won't move me to their second screen and start answering emails on their first screen, right? How do I make them comfortable to ask questions and actually engage in the subject matter? And really, it comes down to, and this is cheesy, but I really believe it to be true, it comes down to letting your personality shine out, letting your natural passion for your subject matter shine out. And it's not about saying, this is how we, as a group, as Sousa, as people present. It's about saying, this is how Bridget presents, this is how Val presents, this is how Uli presents. And people will know that they want to come to your sessions because you have a really fun and passionate and engaged way of speaking. And that looks different for everyone, right? So it's not about trying to fit yourself into a box or trying to be someone that you're not. It's just about leaning into yourself, and then that will make it more fun for your audience. Just be yourself is my message on this one, because being, you know, real and being authentic, number one, that will make you more relaxed. Number two, that will make your audience like you more, because the good news is people do want to listen and they do want to learn things. I've made it sound like no one's listening to anyone ever, and that's just not true. People want to learn new things, and if you appear as yourself, they're going to be excited and they're going to want to listen to what you have to say, which is really nice, right? So this is one that I have found at every single company I've worked at, and that includes right at the start of my career, when I was like a shop girl, when I was like 15. Jargon is the poison of every single organization. And I thought I'd show you some phrases from the marketing and comms world. So say I came on here and I started talking about CTAs and a CTR and using a BANT with an ABM team, you would literally be like, what is she talking about? Well, yeah, everyone knows this one, right? Yeah, no, so everyone knows what WTF, and I did that on purpose. I do have some comms and brand cheats in the front who knew what those acronyms meant. But I'm telling you, every organization I have gone into and I've thought, Jesus, another language that I have to learn. You know, I remember in Deutsche it was CIO, CIB, FTR, and again, I'm not a finance person. I have a lot of trouble even managing my own bank account. At Accenture, it was, I blocked it out, to be honest. And coming into Sousa, it was all the IT stuff as well. And, you know, again, it goes back to what I was saying before. You instantly get alienated and stressed if you come into a situation and you don't know what's been said. And every person is guilty of this. I'm guilty of this. I still do this all the time, especially when I'm talking to my team. But you need to remember that when you're delivering any kind of message, you have to keep your language really, really simple. And this is actually something that I find non-native speakers of English tend to do better than native speakers. So if you're a non-native English speaker and you're presenting in English, you're already at an advantage, which is great. Because any sort of jargon or too much use of slang or idioms just isn't going to help you get your message through.
I often find, Bridget, that jargon is worse because it means that people cannot explain it simply.
Yeah.
So they actually haven't done the hard work to really work out how could I explain this to the audience.
Yeah, and that's, if you didn't hear what Dom just said, he said that people often rely on jargon when they haven't done the hard work to explain what they want to say. So jargon is definitely a crutch that people use. And if you talk about what you're trying to say in your message, you know, we've all heard this before, but can you explain it to your granddad? Can you explain it to your 5-year-old? Can you explain it to your cat, if you're me? You know, what is it that you want to say? And that's what I had to do when I was working on this presentation. I was like, I want people who are technical to know that they have lots of things that they can do to inspire non-technical audiences. And that's literally it, because when I was in the demo palooza yesterday, I was glued. And again, I had no idea what was really on the screen. I had no idea really what they were talking about, if I'm being honest. But I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, someone who works in people corporate comms was glued to a demo palooza. Like, that's the example of something that's killing it on every level, right? And they're a good example of this next one, which is tone and posture. So when you're presenting in person, you want to look more like my little pal on the left here, who's confident, he looks happy, he's got a nice tone of voice. You can't hear him, but trust me, we had a little chat earlier. He's happy, he's ready to present, he's excited. And then this guy on the right, he's hunched over, he's a little stressed out, he's really nervous, he's anxious that people aren't going to want to listen to what he has to say, he's looking down, he's not really making eye contact with his audience. And this is something that you think might be only relevant in person, but actually I've had to do the most work on tone and posture for virtual meetings. And this is a really regular part of my job. I will open and MC all people events at SUSE. And I have a real tendency when I'm at my laptop, I have my screen in front of me here, my laptop here, my camera's up here, and I'll be like, you know, we're all at home like little crabs, or not crabs, little prawns typing away. And I have a real tendency to look into my computer and be like, hi everyone, welcome to our session, our People Connect, and really great to have you. And all the people on the screen can see me as like this, hunched over. And I'm sure people will be like, that's really not the Bridget I know. She's like fun and she's engaging and she loves to chat to people. She's not at home like scrunched up and stressed out. But you actually really have to think about this when you're at home on a virtual meeting, because it comes across even more, especially if you're a main speaker. You need to remember you're on literally often a big screen right in front of someone's face. So you want to look at your camera. I'm imagining my camera at home. Look at your camera, have your shoulders back. Think about how people are going to perceive you. And you can obviously look down at your notes and you can look to one side and say, over to you, Hayley, like I do when I'm on these calls. But obviously in person, it's really important. But if I can have you take something away, it's really think about how you look on calls virtually as well. And you know, I conduct, I'd say 99% of my meetings virtually. So it's something I've really had to work on. And when we talk about tone, that's been a huge growth area for me as well. Like I said, Irish people have a real tendency to talk very fast. I find Spanish people are great to talk to for me. I can see Elenia in the back because she's Spanish and she lives in Dublin. And I love chatting to Spanish people because we're on the same tone and speed. But I've really had to work to take a step back and be like, you know what, Bridget, most people are not on the Irish speed of talking, especially if they don't speak English as a native language. And something I have done recently to help me tackle this is I've actually listened to people speaking at 120 words per minute. So research shows that people listen best at between 120 and 150 words per minute. So I figure if I listen at 120 and I try and aim for 120, I'll probably hit 150 and I'll still be in the safe zone. So it's about being very aware of the areas you need to grow in, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? We're all good and bad at different things. And this has been a huge one for me, is really thinking about my tone, how I speak, how I stand, how I sit. And you'd be really surprised the difference it'll have in terms of people thinking that you're confident and that you're able to deliver your message. So I'll leave you with a couple of key takeaways, and I hope this has been useful for all of you. Number one, keep it simple. And I really mean super, super simple. Like I said, when you're starting a presentation, start with those 2 sentences, to bring those 2 sentences into a paragraph, and then have your presentation come off of that. Everything you say should come back to those 2 sentences at the very start. Remember who you're talking to. Gosh, I sound like my mum when I say that. But remember the people who are either going to be in the room with you, who are going to be on virtual calls with you. who are going to want to hear what you have to say and who are going to take that action away with them. Remember, what do you want people to think and what do you want people to do? Be confident and be yourself. Again, slightly cheesy, but I really love when I go into presentations and I really get a sense of people and who they are. I love to get a sense of people's personalities and, you know, a bit of fun about them. And even if you think your subject matter is boring, I promise you that there's a way you can make it fun. And avoid being overly technical. It's always really good to offer people the opportunity for supplementary materials if they want them. But if you're presenting to a general audience, keep it very high level and say, if anyone wants to come and chat to me after, if anyone wants more info, I can ping it on to you. And that's totally fine. And remember, you can do it. Like, have some fun. You know, be yourself, deliver your message, and be confident. Because I can tell you, as someone who has been sitting through presentations about stuff that she knows basically nothing about at SUSE, I've had the best time ever because the presenters are passionate, they really believe in what they're saying, and they're excited to be talking to me. And so I think that's the most important thing, right? So I don't know if anyone has any more questions, but I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much.